All right. So we are recording this for people who cannot join in real time. And it's my pleasure to introduce our panelist today. Adam Fernandez is joining us from Lawyers for Good Government. Adam has spent his career shaping and enforcing civil rights protections across the entire U.S. Prior to coming to work for Lawyers for Good Government, he spent nearly a decade with the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, and where he advocated for civil rights for everybody within the borders of the U.S. He's helped manage several coalitions of progressive advocacy organizations. He currently manages the Lawyers for Good Government policy team and Lawyers for Racial Justice initiative. So building partnerships with civil and human rights organizations to make sure that we have equal rights and equal justice. I have dropped Adam's Twitter handle in the chat. And if you follow him, you will feel so much smarter right off the bat. Just raises your IQ by, I don't know, at least 50 points. And it's an antidote to 4 years of idiocy, is to start following all the smart people. So, Adam, tell us anything else you'd like to know about us.
No pressure tonight, though.
Seriously, thank you both. I've known you both for a while, and it's a real pleasure to work with Demcast. And yeah, thanks for the kind introduction. I do what I can on Twitter. I always try to keep an active call to action pinned on my Twitter account. And actually, the one I currently have pinned, while it's not directly related to HR 1, or rather the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, it is actually quite related to the issues that we're discussing. And I'll get into that a little later.
Okay, and I just dropped that tweet in the chat, so you guys can take a look at that. So Adam, you know, we've had a lot of questions as we've been hosting these calls, and just trying to understand how the democracy bills, you know, really affect how voting would look going forward under this legislation. Talk to us some about, I think for the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is actually HR 4,
yeah,
right? And has it passed in the House? No.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay. We're hearing June.
Okay. So there's just some confusion about like what the difference between that and For the People is, and that would be helpful.
Of course.
And welcome Barbara as well. She just joined us.
Welcome, Barbara.
Hi, everyone.
I was on a call with her last week, and her energy is contagious. So I was pumped up after the call, which is why I asked her to join us. So I'm hoping she'll pump you all up as well. So.
Well, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
And Barbara's modest, but Barbara's a real hero of the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. And it's a real honor to be on this and just discussing this issue with her. Because yeah, it's a real pleasure.
Thank you.
But Lori, to your question about, you know, the differences between HR 1 and HR 4. So HR 1 is a big bill. It includes like almost everything you could ever want in voting rights and democracy reform. Automatic voter registration, enhancing ballot security, some stuff on gerrymandering, some stuff on getting dark money out of politics. But you know, there's one really important thing that it doesn't include, and it doesn't include that on purpose. And that's the specific amendments to the Voting Rights Act, which need to happen after the 2013 Shelby County v. Holder decision. So taking a couple steps back. So back in 2013, the Supreme Court, really gutted an important part of the Voting Rights Act. There's two main provisions within the Voting Rights Act. You've got Section 2, which allows you to sue after the fact if a state passes a discriminatory voting rights law that is still in effect. So you can sue after the fact, but the really great thing that existed up until 2013 and now no longer is enforceable is something called Section 5, which prohibits districts and states from enacting changes to their election laws unless they get approval through the Department of Justice. So basically, a state, a covered state or a covered jurisdiction wants to make a change to their voting rights law. They want to change the amount of documentation required to vote, i.e. pass a new voting rights law. They would have to go to the Department of Justice and ask for permission. And then the Department of Justice looks at it and says, do we think they're being discriminatory? And then they say, no, in which case you can't, the state can't actually implement that voting right infringement. So what the Supreme Court did in Shelby County v. Holder, they didn't actually say that the entire concept of preclearance, having to get permission from the Department of Justice, is unconstitutional. They didn't actually get rid of the concept of preclearance. They just said that the formula that's required, Congress basically didn't do its due diligence. They were using an old formula that was basically looking at what states had done far into the past. And they shouldn't have done that. And they should have looked instead what states were doing roughly around now. And the good or bad thing is that we see today so many states passing such clearly discriminatory voting rights bills that there's a real need for the existence of Section 5. Frankly, if Section 5 were if the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act was in effect right now, I'm like there would be so many jurisdictions that are covered by it. So the important part of why this is not included in HR 1, the big omnibus, everything you could ever hope for bill, is simply because the Supreme Court said back in 2013, Congress, you weren't careful enough with your with your formula. So the decision has been made, and I think it's the right decision, that you split the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act from HR 1, and you cross all the T's and you dot all the I's and you make it extra clear that what you there is complete Congress is being so very careful when it is making these amendments that there is nothing that Congress is doing wrong. And that these are exactly what Congress is intending to do, and exactly what what the 14th and 15th Amendment empowers Congress to do. And so that if the new amended Voting Rights Act is challenged before the Supreme Court, there's nothing that the Supreme Court can complain about. So yeah, I hope that explains the difference. I can go into more detail, but that's why HR 1 and HR 4 are different in a nutshell, and why the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act is so very, very important.
And we've been focusing on HR 1, and I think now we need to shift our focus to both, because we need to ensure that both are passed. And will all of everything that they've been doing, that actually strengthens the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, correct? Because they can use this as evidence in their formulations?
So long story short, like yes, the more discrimination that happens, the more that you can sue under using the Voting Rights Advancement Act. However, I wouldn't call committing discrimination necessarily strengthening the law, but it certainly strengthens your case that discrimination happens, and thus it should be reversed. So.
Well, that makes sense to me. And I think is one of the reasons, Adam, that they overturned it was because they felt like states weren't creating these racist laws anymore, or was that not part of the calculation there? It was just based on old formulas.
It's been a while since I've read the Shelby County v. Holder footnotes. I seem to recall them making some manner of point that, you know, that they hung their hat on that you were focusing too much on the past. And I seem to remember them like inviting like that you should base it more on the present, just with the unfortunate understanding that the Supreme Court knows it's really hard to pass laws these days, and that, you know, Shelby County v. Holder was back in 2013, and while we've introduced the Voting Rights Advancement Act a few times since. In fact, like John Lewis worked on it while he was alive, and it was unfortunately after his untimely passing that we renamed it the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, because he worked on it so much, and it's a true. Sorry, I've worked with him on related issues, and it's just it's emotional to think of that man, because he's such a powerful figure, especially on this issue. But yeah, like this is something that needs to happen. This is something that that we've been perfecting over the years, including through the work of John Lewis himself, and it's vital that it pass. I think we're getting into a place where we are within this close of actually getting the Voting Rights Advancement Act passed, and this is the opportunity. When it comes to the Supreme Court, we're doing exactly what the Supreme Court asked in Shelby County v. Holder, and it's time for us to enact it into law and to better strengthen voting rights for everyone. And I'm gonna just add one additional related plug to that tweet that you sent out in the beginning, Lori. So a related issue that is very, very important is actually Barbara's successor at a really important organization known as the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, is up to lead the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division, who is in charge of enforcing the voting rights laws. Barbara created an organization, a movement called Election Protection. You'll know it as their Twitter handle, 866-OUR-VOTE. Kristen Clark, the head of the Lawyers Committee, has been implementing that for many years. She is one of the true heroes when it comes to voting rights. And President Biden nominated her to the Department of Justice Office, Civil Rights Division, to lead this very effort. And her hearing is going to be next week. And it is very important that all of us support her for that, because when it comes to voting rights enforcement, there are few people in the United States who are more important, and Republicans and people who are against voting rights know this, and they are going to come after her with guns blazing, and we need to be at her back. So one of the things that we do at Lawyers for Good Government is call to actions of attorneys. We already have more than 1,600 attorneys who support Kristen Clarke, and we've sent that to the Judiciary Committee. However, we had a discussion internally, and we decided that we were not going to limit this one just to attorneys. Supporting Kristen is so important that we wanted to open it to everyone, and we strongly recommend that everyone go out and support Kristen Clarke. Call your members of Congress, support Kristen Clarke, and join our sign-on letter in support of her, because when it comes to enforcing these laws and hopefully enforcing the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act after it is passed, like who we have in that position is so darned important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. If I could just say, just a little bit more about HR 4 and about the Shelby decision. I teach the Shelby decision, so that's totally in my wheelhouse. I just wanted to point out a couple of things, everyone, because I saw some of the questions in the chat. That yes, there was in fact the Chief Justice Roberts, in writing the Shelby decision, did engage in a couple of fictions. And one fiction was that somehow this nation had overcome most of its racial discrimination history in voting, and that it was an affirmative duty of Congress to prove that that discrimination still existed. Now, he said contradictory in the decision that, of course, we all know that discrimination in voting still exists, but Congress didn't show enough of it. And it was interesting because, normally under judicial principles, the court does not substitute itself for Congress. When Congress feels it's had an adequate hearing, adequate determinations, then the courts normally defer to Congress. It's called judicial deference, to congressional, findings. But in this instance, even though Congress had 26 hearings, he decided that wasn't enough. So one reason why you see the split between HR 4 and S1, the For the People Act, is that the evidentiary threshold of hearings and findings and the evidence of how many court cases have been decided against these states, et cetera, that you got to show for HR 4, you don't have to show for S1. Because S1 comes from a whole separate constitutional authority of Congress. Congress has the right, and people keep forgetting this because Congress rarely has done it, but Congress has the right under the United States Constitution to set forth any requirements for federal elections. And federal elections are, of course, all the Congress, all the US senators, all the House of Reps, all the US senators, all of the, of course, the president, vice president. They can set those parameters. That is the authority of Congress, but they have just not done it. They rarely use this authority. They've always had it. They used it a little bit when they did the NVRA, right? The National Voter Registration Act. They used it a little bit when they did HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, but they rarely really have ventured into this territory. But now what we're saying is that given how outrageously crazy these states are in trying to block voters they dislike, that we desperately need, these, as I call them, bookends. We desperately need to have S1 where we set uniform standards so that if you, wherever we are, Indiana, Maryland, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, even old Florida, wherever you are, that you have the same identical rights to voting, that they cannot, at least you have a minimum standard. So if we say, under the act that you have, 2 weeks plus of early voting, that's the standard everywhere. No state can do less than that. They can do more, but they never could do less. So that's the kind of, but HR 4 is so different, right? Because what it does is it tests any act, because unfortunately, I'm sorry, but I can't think criminally enough as these folks think. I just can't come up with some of this nonsense that they've come up with. Criminalizing water, right? And food. I mean, I can't come up with the nonsense. And that's the beauty of HR 4. HR 4 says, regardless of what the standards are, that we look at any new law, process, or procedure. We examine it to make sure that it doesn't have a discriminatory effect and our purpose, our intent. So we look at all of the holistic framework of how it operates. And I always say that, the reason why you need S1 on one side and HR 4 on the other is that they're bookends. Think about it, that if all the books on the shelf represent our voting rights, our right to, cast a mail ballot that's not, unfair, that's not, burdened and made impossible to do. Our right to have an early ballot, our right to vote on a Sunday, our right to do any of these things. If every one of those are a book on the shelf and you don't have these bookends, they fall off, right? They can fall off. And any other nonsense that they come up with. So the beauty of HR 4 is that it captures all the nonsense that we can't foresee. It blocks any discriminatory action that people can creatively come up with and try to hide it and try to say, oh, well, it's good government, as you've heard Kip say, right? His defense of SB 202 is that it's good government. It's good. At least we say that you could have a Sunday voting. At least we say you could have a drop box, even though you can't get to it. I mean, it's just all this nonsense. So anyway, I just wanted to, make those, elaborate on what Adam had said, to just keep elaborating on it because there's so much about this, but this is why, our task is so difficult. And when we talk about public education, because look at how long we've been talking about this. And that's why, May 8th is going to be so important.
And national standards poll really well among all demographics.
Makes sense, right? It's common sense.
It is.
Why should Texans have less rights than Marylanders? It makes sense. Why should we go to vote on a common general election day and not have uniform standards when we have a uniform day for voting? For the time at which we, have these offices set to be determined. I mean, it's so logical. And I'm glad the American people support us so strongly.
And then we do have a question is, how do you think Roberts will come down on this issue now that all of these bills are being passed on the state level? Read articles that in his early years, he really favored voting restrictions.
Remember, by the time he was appointed to as Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, he already had a 33-year history of opposition to the Voting Rights Act. He had written that was one of his main goals in his career was to strike down the Voting Rights Act. There was never any question about that. And of course, remember, that's why when he was during his hearing, the famous quote, I'm going to call the balls and strikes, remember, as they occurred. That was his famous kind of, I'm going to be this neutral person. And what he said to the Senate during that hearing is that he had no intent to strike down Section 5. What he never said was he wouldn't strike down Section 4B, the coverage formula. So he used the technicality to achieve what he had set out to do all his life. Is he moved by what he's seen happen? Who knows? I doubt it. because, sometimes, they have, these ways, but at the same time, you always have to be careful, when you're dealing with the court, you never quite know. But I think that we have to anticipate a real battle when we pass the new HR 4 in the courts.
So I'll just add that, I pitched, that we should all support Kristen Clark. In addition to my work on voting rights and democracy reform, I also work on nominations, not only executive like Kristen Clark, but also judicial nominations. And, where I go when I hear where will John Roberts go, my thought is how much does he fear the American people and Congress being so angry at him that we expand the size of the Supreme Court? Because we know if he does another one of these bills, he has another opinion like Shelby County v. Holder that eviscerates voting rights. He knows how angry the American people are going to be. He knows how popular these bills are. He knows that he will be responsible for the Supreme Court being expanded, not like the rest of us for demanding it. He, through his actions, will be responsible for the Supreme Court having to be expanded. He's in the past been a bit of an institutionalist. I think he'll do the right thing, but if he doesn't, like with all of these issues, if people where there's a stumble, there's a stumbling block in the road, we look for what is the advocacy position that we need to take in order to fix it. And if John Roberts decides that he needs, or he's going to do another one of those Shelby County v. Holder decisions, I think we all need to be prepared that one of the things on our agenda needs to be expanding the Supreme Court.
Well, I hope by that time, anyway, there may be a Black woman on the court at some point before then too. Oh yeah, put it up. Because we definitely want to see that happen. And who knows? I mean, the one thing we know for sure is that it's headed to the court. Right. Regardless of what happens, no matter how benign the bill may be, it's going to head to the courts. What I like about HR 4, and we're going to have to see where it ends up, is that it also has some national provisions, that are unlike what Section 5 and what the Voting Rights Act has been before. It's going to have some notice provisions about changes to voting laws, procedures, practices. It's going to have some requirements around what we call known practices. Yes. That they will be automatically subject to a higher scrutiny and review. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are good about this act that even goes beyond all the specifications that will be in S1. There's some really great stuff here. And I just think that, when people see HR 4 in its totality, you'll start seeing how rich it is. And how beautiful a bill this is, and guaranteeing all our rights. Because people used to say, well, that old Voting Rights Act that only applies to the South. Well, that's going to be a new day now. And it always applied nationwide for Section 2, but now for pre-clearance and for notice and a whole lot of other things, it's going to be nationwide. And that's going to broaden the scope. We're going to be able to catch the the Wisconsins. We're going to be able to catch the Wisconsins within our reach. We're going to be able to catch, a lot of these states that have been acting, up south, as we like to say, bad. So there's a lot of good that's going to come out of HR 4. And I'm really, really looking forward to it.
I'm glad you brought that up, Barbara. I had not considered the fact that it had applied not nationwide before. And I did see today, I think there was a post about Michigan's elections But that Michigan by ballot initiative had required nonpartisan redistricting. So the state legislature did not want to do that, but the people acted and forced the issue, which is more power to them. And I'm glad to see that, but we shouldn't have to do that state by state and require this. That should be a national standard.
And then there's a question that Governor Abbott said that if S1 passes, he'll change the date of the state election so they don't correspond with federal, so he can get around S1. Is that a significant risk?
Well, this is an interesting one. It's called having what you call dual voting systems. Mm-hmm. And frankly, dual voting systems just don't work well because they're expensive. And they're expensive to set up. I mean, imagine you got to run. What he's saying is that he means he would get around S1 for state elections. He thinks. Yeah. Because remember, he's still bound for federal elections. He can't get around the federal elections. Whatever date he sets for the federal elections, but remember, the federal elections are set by the Constitution and by standards already. So he can't do anything about that. He can't change the federal election dates. The only thing he can change is his state election dates. Now, remember that under H.R. 4, that change would be subject to review. That very change. Now, I've dealt with dual voting systems. We sued Mississippi. You can go back and look at some of the old cases, especially from the 80s. And, when I came to the Lawyers Committee, they would be in the 90s where we sued Mississippi for running a dual system. And the Supreme Court threw it out and said it was clearly discriminatory. And that's why they set it up, was to try to avoid, giving African-American voters the same opportunities to vote. And, they had a very suspicious eye towards dual systems. So that's what he's talking about. And I'm just like, try it. That's the beauty. When we have these laws, our response to these folks is try it. It's no longer moaning and groaning and, oh, woe is us, talking about Georgia. If H.R. 4 was law right now, everybody, we'd be laughing at Georgia. Mm-hmm. We would.
And you look at the activists in Georgia, the night that law was passed, when they, arrested Representative Cannon. Yes. The activists showed up at that jail. I mean, they were there outside that jail. Senator Warnock was there. The press was there. And they actually made it a much bigger national issue than if it wouldn't, because then everybody, and that is the reason that even though we won the White House, we cannot back down right now. And I think this is a great time to start talking about actually what they have planned with these motorcades. And we have a lot of great, incredible grassroots leaders. So if you haven't heard about this, might be a time to talk to your local organizers about maybe planning one in your city, because these sound amazing.
Yes, we're praying that people will join us and hoping that everybody will bring your power, your personal power, your advocacy power, your love of justice to May 8th. I know that we bring it every day, right? But May 8th, we want to do something unheard of. And that is, we want to collectively move as one across the nation. We want to collectively move as a wave across this nation in support of S1 and in support of H.R. 4. We want to do everything in our physical power to educate voters about these two bills. We want to make sure that by the end of the day, people are like, okay, I've heard it, and that they've heard so much of it from us. And we also want to get out there in the streets and not only educate the voters, but activate people, where people say, oh, this is the way we win this. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a way to win. There is a way. Oh, wow. And all we got to do is make sure that, that the Senate votes and that they, remove any obstacles to that vote? Really? And HR 4, you're telling me that it will, that it also does these things? Oh yeah, we want people to get that sense of, oh, there's an answer here, because a lot of people don't understand that. They don't understand that these two bills combined really answers, a huge percentage, almost every one of the problems that we got out there. And people gotta, they gotta sense this and they gotta understand it. Remember this whole thing about Georgia taking over boards of elections under pre-clearance? That's been stopped, folks. That provision was used to stop that kind of stuff. So much of what we're talking about right now, HR 4 would answer. Now let's talk about S1, bans the partisan gerrymandering, right? HR 4 is your answer for racial gerrymandering. That's how you see these two bills playing together and how different they are and how much you need the two of them. Because we can't have partisan gerrymandering, but we also can't have racial gerrymandering. So you got to have, the two bills, really reinforcing each other in a strong way. So there's, so May 8th, we get out there and here's what we're going to do. If you go to votingrightsalliance.org right now, you can see some of this information. By tomorrow, we're going to have up, or by the end of tomorrow, we'll have up another, there'll be more websites, unified websites on all of May 8th's organizing. But if you go to votingrightsalliance.org right now, and you'll see the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Day of Action, all the information about it. There's an event page when you click on for more information. You're going to see all of it. You're going to see the schedule, but we're going to start off with a national broadcast. Yes, a national free broadcast. So anybody, anywhere in the country, whether or not they can come out, whether or not they want to come out into the public, they can still watch the broadcast and get super educated about these bills and how they can get their activism on, right? Then the second thing we're going to do is we're going to take to the streets. We're going to have press conferences in 100 cities, folks. We're targeting 100 cities and towns. We already got 60 to 70 of them set up. We intend to have more. We need organizers. We need lead sponsors in several cities. And you can, find out that information too, by, connecting with us, and we'll, connect you to all that great information. And, in this, when I say us, I'm talking about there's 83 organizations right now and growing. And so I'm probably way behind on the list. And we're talking about, all the good organizations that get out here and fight for justice every single darn day. And we also are talking about the local organizations that are, that are there fighting for justice every day and have a much harder burden in some ways to deal with the racists at the local level. But the beauty of the votercades is that when they take off, we're going to do it together. So all the votercades across the country will leave simultaneously at 3 o'clock Eastern across the country. And we will, we will drive. We're going to have a playlist. Okay, of course, we're going to have a playlist. I mean, come on, it's 2021. And that everybody will be united around. But we also are going to be honking our horns. We're going to have a John Lewis, big old beautiful John Lewis banner that will precede the votercade. There will be, people marching and chanting. There's going to be, we've done, for anybody who is questioning this, we've done 51 of these. 51, 31 during the general election, 55, 24 in Georgia alone during the runoffs. Not one person has ever gotten sick from any of the ones we do because we do them so COVID safe, and most people are in their cars anyway. and they're able to participate through the votercade. But a lot of the young folks got out and marched, and even though I wasn't the young folk, I marched, and we had a lot of good times, educating voters. And I'll tell you, when people see these votercades hit the street, the common thing that people did was they danced on their porches, they clapped, because they knew it was for them. Somebody was there standing up for them, not for a candidate, not for a political party, I'm sorry, but for them, for their right to vote. And they loved it. They danced, they hollered, they shouted. They also ran up to the cars to get literature because they wanted information. We forget about how hungry and thirsty people are for information. So we'll be canvassing, passing out literature, all kinds of information about S1 and about HR 4. And then we'll end up at what we call celebration villages, which is an opportunity for teach-in, but also it's an opportunity to help communities by having food distribution, by having other opportunities for people to eat and to engage, but also for us to feed communities and do other work that we've done. And remember that we're gonna put you in jail for feeding people and put you in jail for giving them water. They're mad at me. They're mad at what we did in Georgia. They're mad at what Black Voters Matters did, because that's what we did. We fed people, and because the food insecurity in Georgia is so horrible. If you haven't looked at it, you should go through and look at those demographic charts and look at where the food insecurity is and how horribly huge it is in Georgia. So that's why they came up with that law. They got mad at us because we were, serving communities and inspiring people to go out and vote and telling them about their power while we were feeding them. So that's what they got angry about. That's part of, this anger stuff. But because they were threatening us all the time, we were doing all of this. You have no idea how many times they called police on us for just doing good stuff. Then we're going to also have a virtual activism village that also will be teach-in and other kinds of opportunities. So it's going to be a full day, a 2-hour broadcast, press conferences, votercades, rallies, celebration village teach-ins, and virtual activism. But the end result is that by the time we come out of May 8th, there shouldn't be a senator in this country who can't say, my folks are upset about this bill, they want it. That's what we gotta have. Mm-hmm. We can't have one of them saying, well, I never heard anybody talk about this bill, nobody in my state cares, blah, blah, blah. We're gonna turn that whole perception around. And that's what we want, that's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do it together, not individually, not in isolation, not one here, one there, together. Mm-hmm. That's it.
No, that's fabulous, Barbara. That's great. I'm so looking forward to May 8th and being able to get the word out on that. And we'll be publicizing that through DimCast as well. So you can keep an eye out for more information. But yes, very exciting. And I think Jamie alluded earlier that this polls very well.
Yes.
That people across all spectrums, including a majority of Republicans, support this. Mm-hmm. My question to either of you, or you can both, weigh in on this, but it seems like to me that it's almost counterintuitive that the GOP's efforts across the 47 states to limit voting, it seems like to me they're just handing us the smoking gun. It's like, oh, you want to pass voting rights? Well, let us show you why you should. I mean,
well, it's actually more vicious than that. I think there's something that folks might be missing, that they call themselves being legally strategic too. Mm-hmm. They think that, remember that the Voting Rights Act has a what they call retrogression standard, and that you cannot pass a law that's worse and make voters of color worse off than what they are now. And I think they're trying to set what they call the worst standards possible, so that any challenge to them later, they can claim it's not retrogressive. So I think they, and I'm just talking legal talk, I'm sorry, folks, but that's, part of what I fear that these rascals are up to. And that's why S1 knocks them down on the other side of that. It just takes away all of that strategy. It destroys that strategy. Somebody said, can we pass this in time? Yes, we better pass S1 this year. And remember, redistricting won't hit in any seriousness. I mean, I know there's states doing stuff right now, but they don't have their data yet, their full data sources. They won't until September 30th. Then they will, start rolling in October. And a lot of them are even, if you've seen some of their schedules, it's next year that they're talking about doing some of their redistricting. So we do have time, but we got to get it done now. Yeah. We can't sit around waiting. I mean, Congress, the House is making a mistake. It needs to introduce HR 4. I understand that they might be waiting for the Brenovich case, which is this evil case out of Arizona. If you haven't seen it, please read it, folks. It's evil. And they're trying to destroy Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act through it. And so I'm sure that Congress correctly has to make sure that anything that comes out of that Supreme Court that we're able to address in this legislation. So I understand the June, thinking, but at the same time, they got to do 20-some darn hearings. Or more. So they need to get started. So I think that there's a lot of a need there, and S1 is gearing up. I mean, it's going to be passable in May, if we do our work right.
Think we can get 10 Republicans?
We should, but you know how that is. We should. Seriously, we should.
Absolutely, we should.
We should. And that's where we need to bring the strength, the heat on. I keep saying we got to bring the heat. We need to bring the heat on these Republicans, because there's no justification for them not standing up for democracy. None. And standing against racial discrimination in voting. We really can't allow this to be about other issues, internal Dem politics or whatever. It's got to be about the Republicans who are refusing to uphold our democracy.
Absolutely. And I'll just add that, there's absolutely no reason why any senator should be against the fundamental American value that people have the right to vote.
Yes.
And that is what HR 1's about. That's what the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, HR 4, is about. These are very clear bills. The Voting Rights Act has been reauthorized so many times in so many bipartisan votes over the years. There is no reason why the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act should not have a vast bipartisan support. We're talking 90 plus senators. Now, the other side of this is the speech that President Obama gave at John Lewis's funeral, that the Voting Rights Advancement Act, such an important bill, has always had such broad bipartisan support in the past.
Yes.
If Republicans do not support the bill, if you cannot get broad bipartisan support, if Republicans stand in lockstep against the Voting Rights Advancement Act, then all options need to be on the table, and we need to talk about getting rid of the filibuster, because there's no reason that a Senate rule that no one cares about should stop this most important bill from being passed. And I know the Demcast is going to have a conversation about this next week. Yep. And I'll just do a plug for next week's call.
That's right. You're leading right into our discussion about the filibuster. There's lots of misunderstandings out there about it. That people think it's written in the Constitution. That, it's just a rule. It's a Senate rule, and we can change it when we want to and when we need to. So,
but yeah, Barbara's been a hero of previous reauthorizations of the Voting Rights Act, and I defer to you when I remember them being really, really bipartisan. Like,
they all of them were. They all were.
Exactly.
And remember Scalia's
no reason that shouldn't happen again.
Right. Remember Scalia's reaction to the 2006 reauthorization being so, so strong with both parties was that it was fear. Mm-hmm. That the Republicans were ruled by fear. He had to make up some mess. That they were, afraid. They were afraid to, to vote against the Voting Rights Act. I mean, they come up with anything. And that's, that's why we just always have to be steadfast and fight and ready to, push forward and get what is needed in this time. I mean, when they stood on that Selma Bridge, every time I go to this, the Edmund Pettus Bridge and stand where John Lewis stood and look down and realize that they had at least 2 blocks to walk. And they saw that line of police officers with those batons, talking about they're going to, knock them down and hurt them. When they kept walking, they didn't walk because they were dumb. They didn't walk because they were crazy. They didn't walk because they didn't believe that they weren't going to get hit. They walked because they knew that the moment propelled them forward. That sometimes you're in a moment and that's the only moment that is available to you. And in this fight over S1 and HR 4, we don't get this opportunity again. If we don't do it this year, it's not happening, folks. We got to do it this year. This is not, and their whole game is, and that's why, McConnell's losing his mind and others, because their whole game is it can't happen if they can just stop it from happening this year. If they can just stop it, then they don't have to worry about it anymore. So that's why it's not a question of this is a nice thing we're doing on May 8th. It's imperative. Mm-hmm. It's imperative. We got to walk this walk. We got to push it forward. John Lewis wrote the first 300 pages of S1. If anybody wants to ask why, do you really need 2? Yes. Why did he write 300 pages of S1? Knowing that HR 4 was out there already. Why did he do that? Because he knew the criticality of having the book in them. That's how the only way we win is that we catch them on both sides and we squeeze them and we make the rights, manifest and we keep, the books on the shelf. Of our rights. And so that's why he did that, and he's, it was brilliant. Think about him. Just think about his writing 300 pages. Just think about it. It's amazing. He's an amazing figure. And don't make me cry, Adam. Don't make me cry.
So I've been working in DC for a decade, and I've met so many members of Congress, and it's like there's only one that I've met that I got the autograph of. It's like as a young civil rights attorney, I was like, oh my God, it's John Lewis. But yeah, I miss him dearly. He was such a great person, always filled with so much passion and joy about he worked on things he had so much energy and effort, and he cared about so many important things over the years, voting rights, but also other stuff. And he always was willing to lend an ear, and it's God, I miss him.
Good man.
When we sometimes feel like democracy is sort of hanging by a thread, I think about him and how many of those moments he encountered through his career.
Yes.
And then he just never quit.
Never.
He mended a thread and then kept to the next one and then kept to the next one. And I mean, that's how you weave that democracy together, right? Is that you have hope and optimism that your work is transformative. And I think, that's the example we go by is, knitting our democracy back together through his example.
Yes.
So Okay, now that we've all cried, it's a cathartic moment. Any questions in the chat? Any other questions? There was a question about which Republican senators do you think might be persuadable?
All of them.
Adam, thank you.
Going after all. Listen, if I in Tennessee can write Marsha Blackburn and Bill Hagerty, you can write your senator. You can.
Precisely.
So, okay, doesn't look like we have any more questions. Thank you, Adam and Barbara, so much for joining us. It's been
thank you for having us.
Helpful and inspirational, and so exciting to have you help us understand the differences, and really, I think that makes a lot more sense to us, and how critical they both are.
Yes,
and really putting those threads back together.
I really hope that I will see a lot of people on this call, you know, engaged in May 8th, leading, you know, those different cities, helping to get the word out, helping to do that public education, because that's where we win. We win with the people.
There's one question, and so since we have a minute, it says, if the bills get passed, would it be smart to have them codified within the Constitution so they can't be changed? I think that probably opens up a can of worms, but you guys have a 2-minute answer on that one?
I can try. Do you want Barbara? I can try.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes, there's a lot of things that would be great to put into a constitutional amendment. Unfortunately, the constitutional amendment process is very difficult. You know, we've been working on trying to get the Equal Rights Amendment passed since the 1970s. I'm not going to hold my breath on constitutional amendments, but bills can be passed. Bills can be passed with a majority in the House. They can be passed with a majority in the Senate, and they can be signed into law. That's what we need right now, and we can get it. Like we'll save constitutional amendments for a later day. Would it be great to have a constitutional amendment, all this in the constitutional amendment? Yes. It's just really difficult, and we use the tools that we have.
Good.
And Barbara, let me just add, I'm going to reach out to you after the fact. So Lawyers for Good Government, we've got 125,000 progressive attorneys across the country.
I remember I spoke at your rally.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm going to reach out to you to see if there's something we can do with our attorney members
yes.
to help.
Yay! Yes.
So yeah,
awesome.
I was at that rally, but I was still in my previous position at MALDEP, the Latino Civil Rights Law.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I've been doing voting rights stuff for a decade, but yes. I've just been at Lawyers for Good Government for about 7 months. But yeah, wow. I did see you at that rally. Yes. So yeah, I'll see if hopefully we can work together and become partners on May 8th too. That'd be great.
That'd be so awesome. I love it.
That's
all right. Awesome.
All right, thank you all, and we'll see you next Tuesday and talk about the filibuster. And meanwhile, keep on posting about the For the People Act. Let's get it passed.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.